Thank you very much. Good morning. It was Martha Brumfield and Mark Goldberger, the co-chairs of the regulatory pathways, global regulatory pathways for CPTR, that asked me to make some comments and to discuss the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation initiatives on global regulatory pathways efficiency, the initiatives we have with different partners. So I'm going to just launch into it by mentioning a few things about the Gates Foundation that a number of you may be familiar with already. And that is to say that the Bill and both Bill and Melinda Gates as a family have a passion, and their vision is that every person deserves the chance to live a healthy, productive life. Further, that their belief is that all lives have equal value irrespective of where they are lived. As such, the approach that is really usually taken by the foundation is based on a couple different principles. The focus is on traditionally neglected areas, including neglected diseases, including populations in the lowest income communities of the world. In addition, principles such as amplifying what others are doing and partnerships across the board with a number of other groups and individuals, all towards a few key things. There's technology-based healthcare solutions developed for impact. Technology-based healthcare solutions developed for impact. And in this regard, the foundation recognizes that it has significant resources, but they are by no means sufficient. And so partnership, collaboration, and catalytic funding is what is really the most important thing. So most of the individuals in the Gates Foundation come up with this vision to contribute under those principles. My own particular remit is in the regulatory areas, which is the full breadth of spectrum from, as I mentioned, technologically based development delivered for impact. So the value chain of discovery through delivery is what is in scope for regulatory work, which spans both pre-registration, preclinical, clinical development, and then into registration, and then, of course, post-registrational functions. I had a short discussion with somebody yesterday who was wondering how Gates Foundation is involved in regulatory affairs. But it's becoming clearer that the principle is not that, well, his question was, you don't have any products that you develop. True. But the partnership for product development is what we're very heavily involved in, with grantees in the front line and the foundation folks providing support and resources where applicable and necessary. So these are some of the areas that I wanted to just go through, especially recognizing that national regulatory authorities in the lowest income countries and in some lower middle income countries need more technical expertise to accelerate the activities that are encompassed by this value chain. So from a purely regulatory perspective, our mission is really to ensure that the development, approval, and delivery of these health tools, whether they be vaccines, small molecules, therapeutics, biotech products, medical devices, and diagnostics, get developed and delivered rapidly, given the situation that we currently face, that a lot of these things take a long time to get to the destination countries and those poor patients that need them. So our approach to working in the regulatory space is to support our colleagues within the foundation. And just a word of note that our colleagues are involved in all disease groups that the foundation targets. So TB is one of them. But beyond TB, there's a number of others: malaria, HIV, neglected tropical diseases in general, and then diseases that cause diarrhea, under 5 mortality, family health issues, including maternal and spanning into newborn and child problems in general. So all of these groups are functional within the foundation to support the various partnerships that are being built. And our regulatory work includes working with our colleagues within the foundation on the one hand. Secondly, outward facing, we also find ways to support the product developers. And I don't mean all the rich, the large pharmaceutical companies who have the wherewithal, the expertise that they need to develop products globally. The product development partners that are non-profit don't have those resources. So working together with them in partnership, building an approach that has a global scale is one of the most important pieces that we have to deliver on. And all of this is done with a main purpose to come up with products that are affordable, low cost. So let me now spend some time giving you specifics about these partnerships. Of course, you know CPTR, which itself is a partnership, public-private, and a number of other groups involved. But if we look at the pre-registrational phase, which means from the discovery onwards, in the discovery phase, there is a major initiative that's funded significantly by the foundation with PATH, bringing together a coalition of like-minded groups, primarily non-profit organizations, approximately 30 of them altogether, that advocate for adequate resources in the US-facing perspective with Congress and other groups to ensure that adequate budgetary allocations are available for global infectious diseases. A number of you are members of this coalition, but it is led by PATH. And it has been able to work very effectively in advocating for resources for the FDA and other U.S. Health agencies. So that's one of the key partnerships in the research and discovery phase. Moving on to the clinical development area. And I do know that CPTR is well into that right now. And in addition to the TB space, let's be aware that increasingly the health products that are going to be developed for neglected tropical diseases will primarily, if not exclusively, be used in these low-income countries. And the development is, for that reason, going to be predominantly, if not primarily, in developing countries. Therefore, it's inherent on the system to make the clinical trials network and infrastructure available. So in that regard, we're working with a group at the University of Oxford in the UK on primarily two areas, which is bringing together national regulatory authority experts who are responsible for clinical trial authorization and ethics committees, which, if you get to really go and sign up and do clinical trials, and I think my friend Dr. Mgoni will confirm it from EDCTP, it's not an easy thing to do. So how do we bring the resources together? This group has come up with a web-based approach that is easily accessible, and I can tell you that I tried it out. Martha and Mark had requested that we look into what are the requirements for clinical trial authorization in different parts of the continent of Africa or elsewhere. And through this collaborative approach, which is funded by the foundation with the Oxford Group, this system is now available to very quickly have responses from different parts of the world, as you can see on the hits in the maps. We were able to identify centers that were interested, have the expertise in conducting clinical trials, different phases for TB products. So, and I think we had been working on it individually for the previous 6 months by doing the traditional approach. So this is one of the tools that now becomes available for a variety of product developers, again, in particular, those who do not have the resources to target and seek sites for their clinical trials. Secondly, I want to refer to another initiative which was born out of a recognition that networking by regulators was critical, again, for clinical trial purposes, authorization. AVAREF, which is the African Vaccine Regulatory Forum, is an initiative that receives support from different funders and has been very effective in piloting two, actually not piloting. They actually conducted the collaborative review of clinical trial protocols for RTSS malaria vaccine in collaboration with GSK and MVI, and also prior to that had collaboratively reviewed the clinical trial protocol for the meningococcal A conjugate vaccine, which was essentially driven by PATH and the WHO. And folks, what this simply means is not that there is a technical or legal joint review. But if you step back, what you would ordinarily do is to go from country to country to country and present the protocol in your protocol development meetings, investigator meetings, and get the feedback, collate them, and go back and modify them as appropriate. You can now do that in one or two sittings. And it is a situation in which the protocols are reviewed, the scientific merits are discussed with the collaboration and cooperation of the developer or the sponsor, and there is mentoring. There is key technical partnership that's provided by the stringent regulators. FDA, EMA, Health Canada, they are all part of this group that provide support. And the ethics committee representatives are also there. The countries can now go back individually and speed up the approval process. It worked for RTSS, malaria vaccine. It worked for the meningococcal conjugate vaccine. It is worth trying, and I urge that you consider using it. Interestingly, it's now being expanded in two dimensions. One, beyond vaccines, and secondly, to more countries than currently are participating in 21 countries as of now. The next stage is really to ensure that the various regional economic communities, economic blocs that the African Union has in place can be represented, so there is a good spread of the representation. And we're also pleased to say that funding streams are underway through the foundation, Gates Foundation, with AVRF. It may not be AVRF, I don't know, when you add non-vaccines to it eventually. But there's good news that they can be re-energized into contributing to clinical research work. Let me go to registration. I spent the first few slides talking about pre-registration, preclinical, clinical development. Now, the biggest headache that we actually see is in registration, whereby the current situation today, and I'm sure most of you are aware of it, but it's well worth noting, has a three-step process, minimally 3 steps. You get an approval by a regulatory authority such as the FDA, and then for these products which are intended for donor funding, UN agency procurement, they have to be pre-qualified. They have to go through WHO pre-qualification, step 2. And step 3, any pre-qualified product is not automatically accepted by the countries. No. So that's the third process. And when you get into a situation where there are 54 countries, 54 NRAs, less or more, in the situation in Africa, then just multiply that, how long that takes to go. It results in drug lag, it results in lower uptake, it results in significant shortening of the death and disability aversions that early implementation, early introduction of these products would ordinarily provide. So that's the goal here. Today, that process is even more difficult if the product is first licensed by a quote-unquote, non-SRA. If it comes from India, and a lot of them come from India, thank goodness for that, because they are affordable. Or if it comes from China, they don't enjoy speeded up pre-qualification, because technically speaking, these two NRAs still have some gaps. Ask your colleagues, our colleagues in the FDA and EMA and WHO. That's the fact. So that creates another burden. What should success look like in future? Well, the future is probably now for some of us, because first of all the processes that are occurring in sequence, there's no reason why they should not be occurring in parallel or concurrently. Why don't we look at that and see how to shorten the timelines? For the WHO pre-qualification process, there are areas of improvement and quick wins that we can have. And lastly, for the national regulatory authorities that, in the case of the African continent, can cause significant delay from country to country, they can work in a different format by regionalization approach. So let me just talk briefly about the partnerships that are building with foundations, significant funding and input for those pathways. Now, registration in the African continent. As you all know, regional harmonization is not new. EMA is based upon that. There are other newer harmonization initiatives, regionalization initiatives in the ASEAN region, Southeast Asia, in the Latin American PAHO region of South America and Central America, and of course in the Gulf states. I mean, there are a couple of them. There's none in the continent of Africa. So it remains one of the most constrained in this regard. So based upon this, there was a move to work together with a number of partners that will have been collaborating to regionalize these functions in the African continent. Fortuitously, these regions exist under the mandate of the African Union. They are called regional economic communities. And the shaded area of the map lists some of those regions. In the south, you have SADC, South African Development Community. In the east, you have EAC, East African Community. In the west, you have ECOWAS, of which there is a French-speaking part, UMOA, and the English-speaking part, WAHO, West African Health Organization. There is a Central African group, OSEAC, and so on and so forth. They are already there. And with this initiative of partnerships, how am I doing? Okay, good, all right. It has been possible to formulate this approach that will bring different groups together. One, the political will, political commitment from the African Union down to the new Partnership for Africa, NEPAD, and the countries themselves are the heads of state and ministerial levels are all involved. Secondly, technical. The technical collaboration is led by the World Health Organization so that they ensure that international standards are maintained even as we seek the harmonization, regionalization, streamlining. Thirdly, who's going to pay for this? So there's a collaboration of donors and funders. And with this, it is now possible to have regional approaches, the first of which has been launched in March this year. And what do we expect that it will do? One, and relax everybody, The goal is not to repeat what has been done elsewhere if in fact there is registration or approval from those areas. That's ultimately one of the most important pieces. Rework is not necessary. Anyone who handles any material from a regulatory standpoint has to be having a value addedness to it, rather than repeating what's been done by the most competent and the most technically equipped people and organizations. But in addition to that, they're developing common technical requirements so that you all, the manufacturers, the product developers, can understand, can know transparently what it is that is required for you to file your NDA or whatever it's called in the various regions. They will do joint work. They will collaborate in evaluation of the dossiers. They will do joint work with respect to inspections, whether it's GCP or GNP inspections, and make decisions. Initially, this is focusing on what the Africans themselves prioritized, the multi-source products, generic products, and then it would go on to other new chemical entities and, of course, to other regulatory functions. A grant has been is running with the World Bank with the initial funding from the Gates Foundation in a multi-donor trust fund approach that will invite and encourage contribution from other funders. Will it work? It's always a big question. We had a pre-pilot, and it seemed to have worked. Just essentially, what happened was that WHO pre-qualification is one of the most compelling venues or approaches to bring the regulators from developing countries together. Through this approach, there was a product that, two of them, the abacavir and amikacin that were being pre-qualified or undergoing pre-qualification review, which was the opportunity to bring the regulators from East Africa together, simultaneously review these dossiers, and essentially provided input, got feedback from the manufacturers, and the bottom line is that it saved significant amount of time, judging from the 2 years to 4 years plus that we project is the typical timeline, to under 1 year. So I run through the WHO pre-qualification, which you all know about, is very important. We hope it can be reformed to be faster. Let me just mention very quickly one post-registrational piece, which is pharmacovigilance. Even though our focus has been on the registrational piece, everywhere we go, somebody is talking about what to do about safety surveillance and pharmacovigilance. Now, the foundation has sponsored and funded a vaccine global blueprint with WHO, which encompasses only vaccine products. However, there's more than that. Drugs are always a question, and we won't go to diagnostics and other tools, but we're now looking at very comprehensively in a well-focused manner to look at what is it that you need for drugs, for vaccines in these various regions of the world. And we're collaborating, as you can see on the slide, with many partners so that we can provide a report, a policy report that will drive what will inform the best ways to approach this in a not product by product basis. We really want to be able to support as many different products as possible, a system that will encompass any future products that are coming from the pipeline. I think I'm going to just end up by telling you very quickly about a successful collaboration. The meningococcal group A conjugate vaccine introduction in Africa, in the meningitis belt. It was a great success of partnership. And you know, if you can produce a vaccine that will cost to the patients less than 50 cents for the dose, and it is built upon collaboration between a manufacturer in India, SII. The development was conducted collaboratively by WHO and PATH, meningitis vaccine program, and the funding of $100 million several years ago, and then a collaboration to register this product in India with the twinning provided by Health Canada. And to know that as of now, more than 50 million people have been vaccinated, and the result has been outstanding so far. Now that we have, if you look at the bottom line, you notice that the percentage of meningococcus A in meningitis has dropped to 1% within the first year and change of introduction. A number of deaths have been averted, and that's impact. That's collaboration. And that's what we do. And so this is part of my role. And I hope I've been able to share with you some of the Gates Foundation's perspectives in global regulatory pathway building in collaboration with a lot of you. Thank you.